Welcome to the Create Your Happy podcast, where conscious female creators come together with a shared vision to inspire and empower women as they learn how to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and collaborate on how together we can change the world. I'm your host, Krista Holt, happiness coach and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to this episode of the show. I am so excited. Krista Giannak is here with me, and I cannot wait to share and hear about her inspiring story. Krista is a writer, story consultant, skier, and speaker who just so happens to also be blind. She's passionate about uncovering untold stories that build trust and communicate the true impact of a business or organization on real people. I absolutely cannot wait for you to share some of your story, Krista. I can't wait to hear all about how you have overcome and how you are now inspiring others. Welcome to the show. I'd love to kick us off with you having an opportunity to share a little bit about your story and where you've come from and how you got to where you are today.
All right. Which would you like me to share? Would you like me to talk about the skiing? Would you like me to talk about the entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it all, right? Like, let's dive in.
Well, it's actually different stories, so
yeah, well, okay, whichever you
can choose your own adventure.
I love choosing my own adventure. But I want you to share whatever you're feeling excited to talk about today.
All right. Well, often people will ask me about the skiing because they'll find that to be the most exciting. They'll want to know, they'll have no idea. They'll be like, I didn't think blind skiing was even possible.
Yeah.
The truth is, let's face it, I actually didn't think it was possible either when I found out about it, or rather before I found out about it.
Right.
It was about 10 years ago when my martial arts sensei told me about this wonderful program in Vermont for people who are blind and visually impaired to be able to ski. And I was...
Thunk.
What?
Who'd have thunk, hey?
Yeah, and I was blown away. I was very surprised that it even existed. So now when I talk about the lessons that I learned from skiing blind, my first lesson is to find the impossible people.
Yes, I love that.
That is... It sounds sort of like a superhero thing, doesn't it?
I'll bet, but I get it.
Yeah, in truth, it's not about superheroes. It's about finding the people that have done or are already doing what we think is impossible.
Yeah. We've got to find the evidence for ourselves that what is impossible is actually not impossible.
Exactly. That's how I got started. And I then from there had to do my research, take those small steps. And one of the small steps I took was to pick up the phone and actually call the director of the program to find out. I asked a million questions. I was like, do people get hurt? Oh my gosh. Do people come back in one piece? How do the instructors guide us? Are they trained? Are they experienced? Volunteers? Oh my gosh. How long do volunteers train for? All these questions. What I ultimately found out, they answered my questions. And then the director also said, why don't you come up to Vermont and see for yourself?
Oh boy, there's an invitation. That really probably put you on the line, didn't it?
Well, no, it was a powerful message. The idea that, yes, I can tell you all about it. I can sit here and calm your fears. And at the same time, it's such a foreign environment to you that you won't really know what it's like until you get here, until you get up here out on the snow. Even if you choose, and he even said, even if you don't end up going skiing with us, just to experience what we have to offer.
Right. So it was an invitation to take the next step, right? And I think a lot of times, I think, and I've done this, and maybe you've done it before, is that you have all of those big questions and it feels so overwhelming to have so much uncertainty that often even prevents us from taking the first step, making the phone call even, because we're not even sure where to start. And I love that you broke that down, because the first step is just taking the first step. It's not the entire journey at once. It's just taking a step in the direction.
Yeah, it could be as simple as picking up the phone, doing a Google search, whatever it might be. And I mean, the booking the trip was a big step in many people's eyes, but in some ways it was a small step because I wanted to meet all of these wonderful people. I
Yeah.
knew I would enjoy the journey to a certain extent. So even if for some reason I didn't feel comfortable once I got up there to be able to ski, I knew I would have some fun. I knew I would have an experience to share for the rest of my life.
Yeah. A bit of an
So
adventure.
yeah, I view that as I viewed that as a positive, and that gave me the strength to actually book that trip. Once I got up there, I had to do lots more steps. I had to put on the ski boots, and boy, are those ski boots painful. They are not fun, but I'll never forget that first day out there in the ski boots, the peppery snow on my face and
Yeah.
the feel of the slope under my feet, the swoosh of the skiers going by, the sounds of the cheery people getting excited, and the snow machine, and all these fun sounds. I was on flat ground, and yet I was pretty scared because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And yet I also knew that I didn't have to leap into danger. I could take the small steps. I could wear the ski boots for a while. I could walk around. I could try the skis on. I could learn to balance on the skis. It wasn't until they gave me that little push down that little hill that I really felt like I'd accomplished something. And at that point, I was skiing, I was gliding, and it was so exciting because I was practicing the skills that I'd been learning. I
Yeah.
was getting the directions, the lead ski guide was giving me directions, and they were all literally forging a path for me to go forward as a blind skier safely.
I love that. And that's honestly, isn't that a metaphor for going forward in our journey in life in general too, right? Sometimes we need that little push to push us outside and put those skills to use.
Absolutely.
Brings it all together.
In
So
some
what happened
ways,
next?
what happened next was again a series of steps. I got better. Of course I fell lots of times. I got back up lots of times, and it kind of progressed from there. I'm still a very much a beginner skier, and
Mhm.
I'm just on the bunny slope where if I go back up there, that's where I'll be.
Yeah.
And yet that isn't even the point. The point is that I was excited to be able to try something that I had only dreamed of in the past.
Yeah. That's amazing. I absolutely love that. And how does that play into the work that you're doing now? I know that you're passionate about sharing stories, and how
Mhm.
does that all sort of tie in to that, the skiing and the storytelling?
Well, my business is wisewords.that matter.com, and I'm primarily a writer.
Yeah.
That the writing side, it's so ironic that for years I was sharing other people's stories, and yet I was shying away from my own.
Yeah, I think
This
that happens I think quite a bit because it's less vulnerable to share other people's stories and more
absolutely.
vulnerability and courage required to share of our own stories.
Absolutely. I love to share other people's knowledge and wisdom and
Yeah.
stories. I love learning every day and discovering new things, being able to write then about what I've learned and discovered. That is my passion.
Yeah, I love that.
At the same time, clients don't always want to share their stories. Just as I had to go through my own journey, they are also concerned about being too vulnerable, sharing a weakness, that sort of thing. What I've learned, though, is that when I share my story of skiing, when I share other challenges that are more mundane but very relatable, like how did I become an entrepreneur? How did I learn to network and have people see me and not my cane? How did I learn to go on camera and not be extremely self-conscious?
Yeah.
Those were all challenges that I needed to face and overcome that people can relate to. Being on the other side of those challenges, and also how to share my story. That was
Yeah.
also a challenge that
Yeah.
I faced and overcame. And so being on the other side of that, at least to a large extent, where, I mean, we're all on
On
a
a journey.
journey.
Yep.
Yeah. But when we share from the other side, we're sharing our vulnerability from a strengths-based perspective. There's some sort of saying, I don't know who said it, but someone said something to the effect of that we share our scars and not our wounds, which
Hmm.
really illustrates, in kind of vividly illustrates what I'm talking about. That
Yeah.
we're not sharing open wounds unless we are advocating for change, or we're sharing with people who are like-minded,
Yeah.
or we're building some kind of trust that way. We're from the other side, when we share our scars, we are sharing and saying, this is our journey. We're proud of the journey we've taken, and this is how the journey can help you.
Yeah, it's empowering that way, right? Because not only are you saying, this is what I've been through, but here's what I did to overcome it. And here's how, I'm using this story to inspire or empower other people who are maybe in that similar situation to take back their power and overcome so that they can move forward in their journey.
Exactly, you got it.
Love that. So tell us a little bit more about what you're what you're passionately working on right now. What are you excited about sharing and creating and doing? Who are you excited about working with? All of these kind of things.
My favorite clients tend to be innovators, speakers, thought leaders, people who are doing something a little outside the norm, or
Yeah.
they've come up with something new, they have a niche, and they're looking to really share the stories behind that. Those typically are my favorite people to work with. And
Yeah.
as far as what I like to do with them, and as it relates to what we've been talking about today, a lot of times when I do my own webinars or workshops, or when I work with or speak to other organizations, I'll guide people through turning points exercises.
Hmm.
And so that way they will go through some of the journey that I went through to be able to share my story. We'll look at how they got to where they are today, both personally and professionally. And then we'll look at some of those aspects of their story to see, well, how has that helped them become a better business owner, a better widget maker, a better whatever they do.
Yeah.
In my case, I feel like my networking journey, my journey to go on video, my journey to tell my story, those have all helped me to become a better writer for my clients,
Hmm.
because they help me, they give me an insight into what my clients go through whenever I encourage them to share that next little bit about their story in their bio, or that next struggle that they just learned from in their blog, the next mistake. Oh, I made this mistake. Oh, I have to admit I made a mistake. Those
Yeah.
sorts of posts that draw people in, that boost their credibility and trust, as long as they sincerely believe that this person has learned from their mistakes. This person has overcome, so therefore can help them overcome as well.
Well, I think from that vulnerable space, from the mistakes, from the so called failures, and I don't actually believe in failure because I think even what someone might consider a failure is truly an opportunity to learn. It's information. And if you use that in the proper way, it can propel you forward into massive amounts of growth. I'm curious, if you could share maybe a turning point in your life that really stands out for you and where things kind of got lit up for you and took you on a new path?
Yeah, other than the skiing,
Yeah,
which
other
was
than
a
the
big
skiing.
turning point
Yeah.
toward me sharing my story.
Yeah.
The skiing was a big turning point in that sense, because it gave me something powerful to talk about when I talked about my blindness.
Yeah.
Before the skiing, I was just sort of tired of answering the same old blindness questions
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Blindness was something I was just trying to get past in conversations so that I could get to the good stuff. I want people to know about who I am as a person, as a creative, as someone who can help them think differently about their business. On the other hand, when I could get past that, then it became, but I needed to get past that perspective of looking at my blindness because people were telling stories about me, whether I wanted them to or not.
Yeah.
And they would even make stuff up. They had assumptions, they had their own feeling about what must happen in a blind person's life.
Yeah.
I realized that it was up to me, just as it's up to all of my clients to direct the stories that people tell about us.
Yeah. That way you can take control of the narrative and let your truth be told as opposed to the assumptions and the stories and the confabulations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Another turning point besides the skiing was my unintentional entrepreneur journey.
Yeah.
I wasn't intending to be a business owner. I wasn't kind of born being like, yeah, I want to own my own business. I knew I enjoyed communicating,
Yeah.
talking to people, learning. That was always my passion. What I didn't know was that it was going to become a business. I was I have worked for a variety of different places. I worked at a nonprofit doing some PR. They eliminated my position entirely, didn't even replace it. They just kind of spread out some of the duties to other people.
Yeah.
I worked with local newspapers, a hospitality industry trade journal.
Yeah.
So I worked for a variety of different publications. When the local newspapers got bought out and the nonprofit eliminated the position, it's like, okay, where am I going from here? I realized that my phone wasn't ringing. I wasn't getting loads of attention. And when my phone did ring, I got questions like, do you know graphic design? Do you know HTML? Can you write, I don't know, this special kind of writing that you've never done before? I was realizing that I wasn't good at checking off other people's boxes.
Yeah.
I needed to, and it was really eating away at my confidence, my mental health as well. I was at a low point. I was pretty depressed.
Yeah.
Realizing that I couldn't continue living that way, something needed to change. I decided that the best way forward was going to be for me to go out there and get my own clients so that I could fill my own portfolio, continue to work on my own growth so that I would then have more to offer potential employers. Eventually, I realized, wait a minute, this is becoming a business.
Yeah. Took
This
on
is
life of its own.
right. This is becoming a business. I'm meeting clients. I'm working with them on our terms, not just theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're really having an opportunity to like really live out your gifts instead of trying to fit the mold of someone else's gifts or expectations or shoulds or skills that other people have that you don't. And this is common for everyone, right? We all are out there trying to sort of, you know, be good enough at the things which tends to have us focusing on the shortcomings, the places where we don't have skills at, and we can get kind of low thinking, well, I don't have that skill and I don't know if I'm good enough to do this job. And instead of saying, but I have this other skill and I'm going to really embrace and lean into that and create something around that, like we can get really stuck in that. So leaning into who you are really opens up those opportunities. And wow, like the difference that we can really make in the world is infinitely more when we are actually just being fully ourselves and embracing our unique voice, our unique gifts and strengths.
Absolutely. I'm all about embracing what we have to offer. When I write blog posts for clients, I don't want to just write anything that any of their competitors could have said.
Yeah.
I want it to have that personal touch, that branding. I want it to be their style. I want it to feel like they could have written it themselves. That's
Yeah.
the ultimate goal. Many times at the end of conversations, people will say, you know what? You helped me think about my business differently. And that's where I shine because with that journalism background and kind of the eclectic experiences that I've had in my life, I have that curiosity to ask those questions that an outsider to an industry would ask.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain industries that I might be more familiar with, and yet at the same time, I'm not in a particular field. I like to say I'm in the credibility boosting industry.
Yeah. I love that. And to kind of circle back also to what you're talking about, and just, I wanted to just say that oftentimes when doors start closing for us, it is absolutely part of our journey to have some of those doors be closed and be like, this is not the direction that you are meant to go. This is, again, trying to take you outside of your genius and into someone else's I don't know, expectation of what you should be doing. So sometimes those doors closing is absolutely what is best for you. And I know I've had a few of these experiences in my own life where I thought, I'm going to go and do this thing, or I'm already doing a thing. And then boom, big door closing, like a
Yeah.
giant garage door, just like, whoop, like, no, that you're not doing that. And then it's, depending on what you do with that moment, because it could go one of two directions. And sometimes it takes a minute for the ego to like, okay, all right, that door closed. Oof, that hurt. Now what? So it's a space where if we can get curious, and I'm a very curious person, and I encourage everyone to embrace curiosity because it is literally going to change your world. If you just start asking more questions and being more curious and exploring the world with wonder, because what can you discover? You can discover so much about yourself. You can discover so much about the world. And a lot of what we perceive as our reality is actually just based on our own assumptions, our own past experiences, the beliefs, the societal standards that we have been taught and, immersed in. Some of those aren't like hard truth. Some of those are just the way it is right now. And sometimes we can confuse the two. So if we can take a moment to be curious about like, okay, so this is how I'm seeing things, but how might I see things differently? How might I shift? How might I lean into something different and break through to what we may have previously thought impossible, to just bring it right back to the start of the conversation? Because I think that discovering what those impossible things that are truly actually possible starts with being curious.
Yes, it sure does. In my case, the impossible people found me through my sensei, but sometimes we actually have to go out there and look.
Yeah. And well, you had to be receptive. You had to be in a space of allowing that opportunity to come to you. And lots of people have opportunities come to them that they are too fearful to go after. So there is two pieces to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me where, what offers maybe that you have going on and where listeners might be able to track you down if they want to hear a little bit more about you and what you're up to.
You can track me down. Wise Words That Matter is my page on Facebook. You can also go to my Wise Words That Matter website. And there's a special link to a free guide, the 10 tips to build trust with storytelling.
Awesome. Yeah. And I hope that our listeners are inspired by the stories and get inspired to, embrace some of that vulnerability with all the courage necessary to be vulnerable and to share those stories. Because I think it's in those stories that people can relate to your humanness, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where we can really truly find our real voice and share that in a way that other people can relate to. And then we can inspire real change in that way.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I would love to just ask you to wrap us up and share just a little bit of wisdom or inspiration with and feel free to share a couple of tidbits if you don't like to be limited to one idea. Sometimes it's like, oh, I got a couple ideas, so that's okay too. just a last little bit of inspiration or wisdom to share with our audience and how they might go out and create more happiness in their life today?
Sure, Christy, I'll make this quick actually.
Okay.
If you think something's impossible, find someone who's already done it and listen to their story.
I love that. Because like we were just saying, right? It's the way that we can see what is truly possible is by looking for the evidence that it could be possible. And if someone else out there is doing it, guess what? That means it's possible for us too. So thank you so, so much for sharing on the show. I have loved having this conversation with you. I hope that people are inspired and empowered to go out and try and discover something that maybe that their heart is telling them that they would love to have or do or experience in their life, and to not let that impossible idea stop them from going after it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. I trust you were inspired to take back your power and create your happy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. If you'd like to connect with myself and or today's guest, you can find those details in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. If you've got an inspiring story to share, you can also apply to be a guest on the show at createyourhappy.ca. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.